Let's move on to our game review. This is Twilight Struggle. If you are into the board game hobby, this is like top 3. I mean, it's like we're reviewing Jaws today. You know, I mean, we are reviewing one of the most famous, beloved board games of all time. This is designed by Ananda Gupta and Jason Matthews. Artwork by a lot of people. I'm going to say all their names. Victor Sete, Roger B. McGowan, Chechu Nieto, Guillaume Rees, and Mark Simonich. Apologies for getting anything wrong there. It is a 2-player only game. You heard me right. 2 players only. There's no 3-player variants. There's no co-op. It plays in roughly 120 to 180 minutes. It came out in the year 2005, long ago, almost 15 years ago. It's weighted at about 3.57. I think that's a little high. I would put it closer to maybe 3.25, something like that. I don't think it's necessarily a complicated game. It is not a complicated game to learn or teach. I think you could learn Twilight Struggle in 15 minutes, but the weight comes from a giant stack of completely unique cards that you must be aware of to play correctly. Right. Jesse, tell us something about Twilight Struggle. Tell us, what is the theme of Twilight Struggle?
Yeah, this is the Cold War. This is basically spanning 1944 to 89.
45 to 89, yep.
45 to 89.
Yep.
Okay.
That's just what it says on the box.
Yeah, but there it is. This is the U.S. versus Russia. This is, I've been really, this game has really been on my brain a lot. I just want to Chernobyl. Are you guys watching Chernobyl?
I haven't because my wife is pregnant and we can't watch things that are disturbing at the moment. But maybe one day we will.
It? I've seen the first ep, and after I saw it, I said I have to wait and watch it with my wife because it's amazing.
It is great. Spoiler alerts. No.
I think it's pre-spoiled.
I was fascinated watching this, and so I was listening to the Russian reviews of that show, and they were saying, it's great, but they don't focus enough on the heroic efforts that was made to mitigate the disaster, and they focused more on the blunders that were made, but they're making their own Chernobyl show about what caused the explosion, and they say that it was a CIA operative.
Whoa.
Have you heard about this?
No,
that's some tinfoil hat stuff, right
so
there, my friend.
When I heard that, I was like, "Oh, come on, they're just saying that." But then I thought, "Wait a second, why not?" And I've been playing a lot of this Twilight Struggle game.
There is a card in the game that says we caused Chernobyl. Remember the we caused Chernobyl card?
No. There's a Chernobyl card. But I started thinking about it, and I was like, "What? Chernobyl was like 84, 86."
I'll tell you.
It's like 3 years before the end of the Cold War, and I wondered how much
86,
did
April 26, 1986.
How much did Chernobyl contribute to the end of the Cold War? And so I just Googled that, and some Russian historians were saying, Chernobyl was a big cause of it, economic reasons.
A huge resource suck for them,
and also them seeing the
and
disaster.
Morale,
that was caused by nuclear war and the nuclear potential of the radiation and what that does to humans. And then I thought, when you're playing this game and you're putting this in the seat of US and you're playing over decades, and how do I end this war? Why not put a CIA operative and make that happen?
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Info Games with Jesse.
I love that this is how our Twilight Struggle review is going. Oh, interesting point, Jesse. But I think what you're getting into is the theme is awesome. And if you don't know anything about Twilight Struggle, you could still enjoy this game. I'm sorry, if you don't know anything about the Cold War, you can still enjoy this game.
Jesse's dead on right. It colors your perspective on history, playing the game.
No. This is one of those games that made me fall in love with historical board games. Probably the first. And you know what? I highly recommend that if you're going to buy Twilight Struggle, you buy a book along with it. Now, there are many good books on the Cold War. I'm going to give you the shortest / best. It's called The Cold War, A New History by John Lewis Gaddis. I read this when I first bought the game 10 years ago and read the book and it really enriched my play of the game. Every time a card comes out with an event that happened in the Cold War, I knew what happened. I thematically understand why I'm playing it, and it also actually makes you a better player because the game is built around strategies that actually worked in the Cold War, and by understanding how the Cold War worked, you actually can play. If you play historically, you are usually playing well.
Yep.
If events come out in certain orders and things happen, etc. It's also, it's funny. I often it's painted the way I see our world. I often like when huge events happen in our world. I often think that would be a card in the Twilight struggle of our time right now. I often think that way. Yeah. I'm like when big events happen, whether it's some sort of crazy scandal or anything, I'm always like, that's a card. Yeah. That would be a card. That would be in the Twilight struggle of the Trump administration game.
I've said it before. There are games that are amazing simulations and okay games. There are games that are amazing games and okay simulations. One of the rarest things in the world, right up there with variable player powers that are equal, is to have a game that is both a fantastic simulation and an amazing game.
Yeah. It really is.
We're discussing two of them today. Democker and Twilight Struggle are two of I think they're the best. I think they're the best that have ever been done.
I'd say I'd put War of the Ring up there too in terms of just like theme integrated with mechanics. But
okay, simulation. Yeah, no, I guess that fits. Yeah. I see that. Yeah.
But no, Twilight Struggle is like it's the dream you had of board games realized. It's like, oh, this is all of the depth of chess, all of the story of a great novel, all of the strategic challenges you want to put yourself to, the amount of research. I mean, there are people who, there are 100-page tracts written online on strategy on this. I've read some of them. They're great. There are whole schools of thought on opening moves. This is a tournament level game that people take as seriously as you want to take this game. People take it at any board game convention worth their salt in the country. There is a Twilight Struggle tournament at every one of them.
Should we give listeners the bare bones what the game is?
That's what we're going to do. Talk us through what is this 2-player game?
Okay, so U.S. versus Russia, right? So you're going to win this game in one of 3 ways: by getting 20 more victory points than your opponent.
Right. So the VP scale is on sort of a what would you call
teeter-totter.
A teeter-totter, right. Yeah. So it starts at 0 and it's 1 piece. And if Russia gets a point, it moves to Russia's side. If US gets a point, it moves back. Yep. And so you have to get it all the way to your 20.
20, correct.
Or the other person has to get theirs all the way to 20 in order for it to win. Then the game instantly ends.
Right. Another way to win is by controlling Europe. Yep. When the scorecard comes out. Another way is forcing you
have to have domination in Europe, right?
Yes.
It's not presence. It's not control.
No, you have to have control.
Yeah, just control. Sorry,
No. Control is higher.
Control is higher than domination. So you have to have control.
Presence is the lowest level of point scoring in a region. Then dominance.
Then control.
Right.
So if you control Europe at any point, you win, which is of course
not at any point. It's and you
during
have to have
a Europe scoring.
Yeah, it has to come out right. The other way is forcing your opponent to reduce the DEFCON to 1
and destroy
which
the
causes
world.
a nuclear war.
Right. So if your opponent causes nuclear war, they lose, you win. I don't know necessarily if thematically.
Which the designers said was something different. There had been a lot of Cold War games before that. This was a Cold War game where the design said that nuclear conflagration is a bad thing.
Yeah.
A lot of these Cold War games actually you can lob a nuke and that can be part of a successful strategy. And they said no.
The game ends.
That is when you lose.
The game ends the moment a nuke is lobbed, and the person who lobbed it lost.
Right.
The only winning move is not to play,
or just not to, toss any nukes at your friends.
And then the last way is if the game goes all the way to the end, whoever has the most points.
Whoever has the most points, right. What is the most typical way for a game of Twilight Struggle to end?
The most typical, I would say if you're Russia and you're going to win, you better do it fast, right? And I would say you probably, Tom, better speak better on like the most typical. I've dominated Europe.
20 point victories,
usually for Russia early,
tends to be. Well, for either team, but yes. Listen, if Russia has an advantage in the game in a tournament structure, there is bidding for sides, and the bid tends to go between 1 to 3 points given to the person who plays America.
America is typically stronger in the late game, which makes them stronger in general when two people are very good, because the game will go to the late game most likely. So there is a little bit of bidding up. Russia is strong at the start.
Russia is quite strong at the start, so much so that a lot of times the slight advantage that the U.S. gets in the late game sometimes isn't enough to overcome the structural advantage that Russia has in the early game.
Depending on how
this is not to say it's not a balanced game. There are plenty of people in tournaments that are U.S. specialized players. They love playing the U.S. side, and so they'll take they'll take the U.S. without any bonus points whatsoever.
I will say, while this is a very well balanced game, there is an amount of luck in this game that could throw the game. Cards could come out in an order wherein the best player will not win,
and die rolls too. Yeah,
but that's why actually in most tournaments they play multiple games against great players. But I will say, always in multiple games the best player will win. But in just one game, there are die rolls in this game that can really affect it, and also you could get a hand of all your opponent's cards, which is really bad. So the game is asymmetrical, as we're saying. And one of the parts of that is there are 3 decks of cards, 3 eras, era 1, era 2, era 3. It breaks up the times between 45 and 89. Those decks have cards that are some for Russia and some for USA. All those cards are shuffled together into one deck and then dealt out to each player. You get a hand of 8
By
cards.
the way, that is the genius of this game.
Yeah.
That's not that light. That is amazing.
No, that is the main mechanic of the game. So this is hand management. You are going to be dealt a hand of 8 cards. Your opponent's going to be dealt a hand of 8 cards. And some of them are going to be your cards. Some of them are going to be your opponent's cards. You have to play 6 or 7 of those, depending on if you have China, depending on how you deal with the space race. You're going to have to play a minimum of 6 of those. And if you play your opponent's card, you get to use some of the points on it to do things, but then your opponent, the card happens for them.
Yeah. The event on the card.
The event on the card, right? So each card has a influence number on it and an event. And anytime you play a card, you can play it for the event or the influence. When you take influence, you're usually just adding points to certain places on the board. There's a giant map of the world.
As an example, I'm playing the United States. I have a card in my hand that is Castro. It is basically Fidel Castro is going to come to power and he is going to turn the beautiful island of Cuba right off the U.S. coast into a communist stronghold.
Yep.
It is worth 2 operations points that I can use to do something else that I desperately need to do.
Right. And also that will shuffle Castro back into the deck. He'll come out again later.
A lot of the cards, when they're used, once the event is used,
right. But I'm saying if you use it for the influence points.
If you're Russia and you use it for the influence points, but if you're
correct.
the U.S.,
but I said I'm the United States.
I see.
Right. So I have to use this card. I'm going to use this card. I'm going to take these 2 points, and I'm going to do it to put 2 points into France, and therefore I have domination in Europe. I have more important countries in Europe, and more of that going on. But the cost of it is now Russia, the Soviet Union has Cuba, and not only that, they have a foothold in Central America. Yeah. They didn't have anything in Central America. Right. It is super hard for them to go anywhere. One of the great things about the game is that in the early war deck, the first deck, which is the 40s and 50s, there are only 3 scoring cards in the game. There is Asia, there is Europe, and there is the Middle East.
Yep.
So what happens is...
Talk about how scoring works.
Yeah. Basically, when a scoring card comes out, it must be played by that player at some point during that round.
If you are dealt a scoring card, you cannot choose to not play it.
What?
During the turn.
Correct. Exactly. And when you play it, that region is going to get scored. There are 2 types of territories in a region. There are regular territories and there are battleground territories. Those are the super important countries that everybody's sort of
battleground ones are all that matters usually.
If you have control of one country, if you have enough units in that country to equal the number on that country,
and units are just chits. They're not soldiers. They're not plastic minis. They're just a little chit with a number on it.
The stability number, right?
Correct. Exactly right. The number on the country is the stability number. If you have units equal to that number, you have control of that country. You basically, they're in your pocket. They're going to work with you. They're going to do what you want. That is a friendly country to you. Yep. If you have at least one of those, you have control. And control, beg your pardon, presence. Presence is going to equal 1 to maybe 3 points in a region. Right, that's what your score is going to be.
So if you have presence and your opponent has presence, you both tie.
It's a wash.
And then it's a wash.
It's a wash. If, however, somebody has more battleground countries than I do, and they have more total countries in that region than I do, They dominate that region.
Right, which could be, let's say it's 5 points, but your opponent still has presence, so which maybe is 2, so you really only get 3 points.
Correct.
And then control is all the battlegrounds, and then the majority,
And then
of all the countries.
an extra point for every battleground touching your homeland or something, right?
You also get an extra point for every battleground country you control, period.
Right.
You also get an extra point for every country you control that is adjacent to the enemy's
Right, that's what it is.
It
homeland.
also varies per region. They're all a little bit different.
Right. So this is the main point of the game. The main game is this chess match positioning, jockeying for when these are going to come out, being prepared for them, trying to make your opponent think you have different scoring cards in your hand than maybe you do by going big in another place, making them, oh, he's putting so much stuff in Middle East right now. Oh, man, he's going to score it. I got to do it there. And then I play something else that I haven't touched in a while that I have points on, and I've made you waste your whole turn.
And because in the early war, the only 3 regions that score are Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, all you see is all of this power and influence being put in there, and the map just starts being covered in these small areas, just completely covered. When the mid-war happens in the 60s,
and it opens up
all
South
of a sudden,
America,
South America, Central America,
Southeast
Africa,
Asia.
Southeast Asia, all of these become new scoring things. And this is what I mean by a great simulation. Just like what happened in the Cold War, all of a sudden you see this very close tactical battle in a relatively centralized area suddenly just go wild over the board,
and you have no idea where anything is, and you feel like you're spinning 1,000 plates and just trying to just pray that you don't lose so bad in every area.
And all the original 3 scoring cards are shuffled back in, so any one of them can
And
come
at
up.
any time, you can lose the game by losing control of Europe. So no matter what you're doing anywhere else, you always, if you see your opponent just building up in France and about to take Italy from you, like, you can't let that happen.
Yeah.
So you have to, that's always a great play too, is just start putting stuff in Europe in the second age, and the other person just goes, oh man, I was really hoping to get a lot of points in South America, but now I have to split my attention between South America and Europe, because what if you have a Europe scoring card?
Yeah. My one big gripe with this game
Yep.
is his use of the word turn. Is where you were just saying, in your turn,
A
you
turn
need
is
round,
really
and it's
around.
like-
Yeah, they flipped that.
Well, it's interesting because it was like a turn semantics here. You're like, I'm going to take that's an action that I do right now. That's my turn. I'm done with my turn. Now it's your turn,
Right.
and then it's your turn, and then that's a round, right? But he calls because the game is split up into 3 eras. Early, mid, late war, and that's 10. He calls them turns.
He does call them. He does call them turns.
But this is what I propose. I think they should be called terms. Because no, but think about it. Because
that makes sense.
It's 45 years broke up into 10. It's really, they actually use a presidential picture for each.
They do.
Each
it's
turn.
It's who's in charge. Then,
And it should be a term, I think. And then we can actually keep the word turn.
Jesse, I think that's brilliant. I really do. I think that's a
should be true.
great idea.
So Jesse, let's take your copy out right now. I'm going to give you a red pen, and we're going
I
to
only have it on the iPad, so.
we're going to change it.
So listen. One of our game players doesn't play this game very much because he realized on the first play that, oh my God, if I want to play this at all decently, I have to know all of these cards. It's like
Trey, you're talking about Trey?
Yeah.
So
it's too much, and it's true.
Here is the one downside to this game. You have to know every card in all 3 decks to play well, not good, just well. To play well, because this is a game
that's
where
an exaggeration. That's an exaggeration.
Really?
But
I don't know. I mean, okay, you can just
have fun playing the game.
You can. That's the thing. You can just tactically move through it and have fun and do your best with what you're given. But there are many cards in the game that you won't know what they mean, and you also won't know. Like, you need to know that there is a card in the game that just takes over Romania. So if you're you're not in the first age. If you wasting anything, putting things there you've just wasted actions, and you won't know that those are wasted actions unless you know the potential cards in the deck.
And that's what brings the complexity up a whole point or more. Really learning because they do that, they make the game more accessible to learn. It's probably a 2-point something. But there is so much complexity in those cards.
Yeah, you have to look.
That's another point.
2 people who've never played the game before, you're gonna have a great time. You don't need to know the cards. Just play. Get the cards in your hand. Do the best you have. It's a great tactical game. But if you're playing with one person who knows the whole deck, you're not going to have a great time. That person's just going to beat you up unless they're just having fun. Which you should. But still, it's worth the effort, I think. And here's what makes it really easy. There is a fantastic app. It is on iOS and it is on Steam. I believe it's on Android. It is not on phones. It is only on tablets or computers. It's the Twilight Struggle app. I think it's $10, maybe 20, depending on where the sales are at. It's great. It's a perfect way to learn the game. It's a perfect way to get better at the game. You can play against the AI. It's not great, but it's going to be fine if you don't know the game very well.
And so it'll get you to the midpoint of capability.
Yeah, and then you can play against real people, whether it's your friends or not. You're welcome to add me. I think it's TRILAMB, Trilam. I think that's
don't
my
even bother
name
using play
on
those
there.
terms.
Before we get into
I am Thomas Dean 007.
I am stealth mode.
Oh, geez, of course you are.
Really? Really?
Look, add us up on Twilight Struggle. We'll play with you. It is asynchronous. You don't need to sit there and play. You can take a turn.
Jesse left out one way you can win the game.
Oh.
Shit.
If the other player has a scoring card in their hand and fails to play it,
you're right, yes.
they can lose the game.
Yeah.
So, which is just...
Don't break the game.
There's so many great nuances to the game and to these cards that a really good player, once you get really into it, you're not just playing for the 20 points. You're playing for 20 points, but you're also threatening Europe so that the person has to defend two different things. You're also creating situations where they could get into DEFCON trouble. And sometimes you're even creating situations where they might get themselves in scoring card trouble. Jesse and I have played one game, and we're in the middle of our second game right now. Spoiler alert: Jesse won the first game.
Yeah,
he won it early. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Russia, one of those runaway Russia victories.
Let's talk about variants a little bit. Let's talk about let's talk about the die rolls. Okay, so we've talked about the two of the main actions of the game, which is playing cards for events, playing cards for their influence points. So there are two other things you can do with cards. Three other things. One of them is coups, C-O-U-P. A coup is the most often taken action in the beginning of a round. It is usually what the first people do because every coup you do lowers the DEFCON and takes another place that you cannot do coups in. So the first person to do a coup in Europe, no one else can do a coup in Europe again until the DEFCON goes back, which is usually never going to happen. If you do a coup in Middle East, it goes down again. Now you can't do one there. Everybody really gets one shot at these coups until the DEFCON starts getting down.
The priority is actually Europe, Asia, Middle East.
Middle East. Okay, got it. And how a coup works is you explain it.
I think it's a little inside baseball. I don't think we need to get to it.
Okay.
What it comes down to is this:
It's a die roll.
is that you are going to spend one of your most powerful cards.
Yeah.
Like the biggest bullet in your gun.
Yeah, the higher number
You're going to
is
spend it, and you're going to roll a die. Mm-hmm. And if you roll a 6, you have just changed the game state in a huge way.
Right. It's a way of basically removing all of your opponent's influence and adding all of yours.
If you roll a 1, you have wasted
your best card,
the best card, and your first action, and you've wasted your big advantage. No, it's not true. That is not true.
It feels that way.
But Trey has one of the reasons. Another reason Trey doesn't like this game is that it can be very swingy there.
But part of it is an experiential game. I mean, you have to be down. Yes, the best player will win in a series, right. But it is. It is a story. You are, sure. and is any war game, any single war game that is part of the game, and people either love those or they don't. But any war game is going to have a certain level of fog of war or randomness that is necessary to the bringing out the story and the theme.
I think that this game proves
this is a war game. We need to say that this is a war game.
Yeah, I think this game proves that rolling dice and having luck in a strategy game is valid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is chess on a global scale.
Yeah, no, this game doesn't work without those. I think this is a boring game without those.
If it is just chess and you're just moving pieces, and now I have the pieces here, now the math works. That's not actually the simulation.
And I think Russia would win every time in that sense if there was no die rolls. And
potentially,
stuff.
No, listen. Losing the first coup does not end your game. You said that, and it's just not.
I know. It feels that way, though. It is devastating. It feels devastating.
It does.
I've blown my 4 and my first turn.
Totally.
And I've done, you feel like, man, the mountain in front of me is insurmountable.
But you have other bites at the apple.
You do,
There's going to be
and it's a
tons of
long game.
opportunities.
There's a 3-hour game usually.
Or it could be over in 1 hour.
It could be. So there's also realignment rolls. Realignment rolls are a less risky, less damaging version of coup. It's really just adding some of.
Well,
And there are cards that are war cards that.
wait, before you go on. So with the realignment rules in particular, because you can, if you control more countries that are adjacent to the country you're attacking, you need a lower roll to get there. So you can choose to go for something. It's like, man, it'd be so awesome if I could just swap this country around, and I need a 6 to get there. Let me try and do it. And it's like, yeah, you can. Then you're really basing your game on luck. But if you're like, I'm going to strategically take over this country and this country so that I'm going to have more, I'm going to use luck in my favor.
Yep.
And then if you get a lucky roll on 6, well, that's just icing on the cake. You get more troops on top of it. But if you're banking on a 6, then that's.
And then one of the last parts of the game that is my favorite. There's wars as well, or conflicts, or whatever they're called.
Sure, yeah. It's just a card comes out, and suddenly there's a war in Korea. The Korean War happens.
Right.
And the United States can lose their foothold in South Korea.
Right.
And it could be a really bad situation. And that card, once that's played, that goes out of the game.
Right.
The Arab-Israeli conflict
stays.
that card keeps coming back into the game.
So genius.
It's so great how the theme comes.
The design by Ananda and Jason is absolutely inspired.
All right, so one of my favorite parts of the game is the space race. So the space race is the emergency safety valve of how you get rid of a horrible card in your hand. Let's say you get dealt 2 of the best U.S. cards and you are Russia. One of them you don't have to play because you can hold on to it. You could potentially hold on to 2 because of the China card. But let's say you have 3. You have 3 cards that would be devastating if you had to play them this turn. They're just devastating, wipe you out of Europe. You can ditch a card to the space race. And the space race is thematically also very fun. You are racing against the other side, and whoever does better unlocks game-breaking powers. You can now, if you get up to level 2, in the space race, and each one is a die roll. So the first one is you must play a 1 or 2 ops card. That's 1 or 2 influence points on the number card. You must ditch that at least. Then you do a die roll, and I think it's 1 to 3 is good, 4 to 6 is bad. You have 50% chance on it. The first person to do it gets 2 points. Second person to do it gets nothing. Then if you do it, you can only do it once per turn, once per whole, whatever it's called.
But then you can get some special powers.
Right. So then the second one is if you get there, you unlock a special power. First or second person, doesn't matter. And now you can ditch 2 cards to the space race every round.
Wait, now, doesn't the second person get there cancel the effect?
No.
For the first person?
No, I believe they both get the
They both get the power?
both get the power.
Okay.
Which is no, yeah, you both can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a later one. The headline.
The headline event, yeah.
Okay, that's the one that gets canceled in the second. So the second power you get, if you're in the lead, is you force your opponent to play their headline to show it first.
That's the first card you play on a turn.
Right. Yeah.
And then,
which is also an amazing piece of design too. Is at the beginning of every turn you play this one awesome card that can only be used for the event, not for the points, and it's very fun. It's very cool.
Yeah. So what happens in Space Race is I have a card that I absolutely do not want the event to come out.
Yeah.
I desperately do not want.
But you're
this to
also
happen.
shuffling it back into the deck and potentially giving it to your opponent.
Correct, because when an event is not played, that card is still live and will be
And
shuffled
now
back.
it could be put into your opponent's hand.
So I say, hey, Jesse, interesting story. I just put a man in orbit. And Voice of America, that wonderful propaganda organization that your American capitalist big dogs are using to spread your virus around the world of the working peoples. Yes, that is disappearing for you. You do not have that no more.
It'll be back.
Twilight Struggle, if you're listening and you're going, all right, I'm in. It's readily available. For a long time, it was not. When I entered into this hobby, oh man, you would wait 2 or 3 years for a new printing of it because it was not the board game world was not as wonderfully populated and successful as it is today. When I first entered this hobby 10 years ago, we were in between print runs on Twilight Struggle. I waited 2 years to get a copy under $300. If I wanted a copy 10 years ago, I would have had to pay $300. 10 years ago, $300. That's like $1 million with inflation.
Were you not in on the Mike Kananak thing?
What's that?
Oh, I got to tell you this thing. Okay, so super quick. Mike Kananak, friend of our gaming group, comes to the Friday night games, once or twice a month. He was promoting a film that was about the Cold War. It was all set in the Cold War. He's a independent film distributor guy, and he loved Twilight Struggle. And he suddenly tells me, he says, "You know what? I think I'm gonna." He's a Brit, and he's like, "I think I'm gonna contact those people and see if I can maybe do a little thing where I get some of the copies of the game and give them out at the premiere, and just do a little cross promotion." And they sent him, GMT sent him tons of Twilight Struggles, and all of these like influencers and people got the game, and people started playing it and stuff like that. And the side note of that is, virtually everybody in our game group got a free copy of deluxe copy of Twilight Struggle. It was amazing.
Did the original copies come with minis or anything? Like,
I do have the original edition, and
because
the board is much nicer now. The card stock is better.
The board was paper.
The chits are thicker.
Oh, really?
The original game, the board is just a super thin cardboard, not real paper, and the chits are much.
So what you're buying today is called GMT Games Twilight Struggle Deluxe Edition. It is $40. There is not a better $40 to be spent in all of board gaming
because there's no minis.
That's it. $40. It is a gorgeous production of the game. There are 2 little expansions for it. I don't think they're available. I think I was involved in the Kickstarter for the digital version of it many years ago, and one of the bonuses was we got an expansion called What If, which has a bunch of fun little like crazy alternate starts. I've never used any of them, but it's nice to have. There's a bunch of fun little crazy variants. I think you can buy them on the digital app if you want to try them. There are also a couple little things. The deluxe version comes with the China card expansion, quote unquote. I wouldn't play without the China card. I think it's really fun. It's basically
no. I think it's the Chinese Civil War. Is that
the Chinese Civil War? Sorry.
Which is different.
That's a different thing. So the China card doesn't come into play until something happens.
No, the China card you start with.
No. The Chinese Civil War is a variant whereby Russia does not start with the China card. They have to do something to get the China card into play.
Yeah, they have to do something in Asia.
By doing that, they're trying to level the Russian advantage at the beginning of the game.
Okay.
Jesse, would this be a desert island game for you?
Yeah.
What if you crash to a desert island?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And I knew it would be the same for you, by
Totally.
the way. And that's why I was like, Tom, you should come do this with me.
Appreciate it.
If I was going to be locked in a bunker with one friend, first of all, it wouldn't be either of you. But if it was one of you two.
Hurtful. I'm just saying you will not.
I would definitely, and I could only bring one game, and it was like we were going to have one game for 5 years, and it's the only game we could play. I don't think I could come up with a better one that would not get old.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Dimitri's going to be very good at this when the 2 of you are in that bunker.
After 5 years, he's going to be amazing.
By the way, I will say, there's a lot of the Venn diagram of all of us and how we're similar in a lot of ways. And you and Trey are similar in a lot of ways, like in things that you guys are both good at a lot of games. You have a lot of of the same games. You and Trey.
Sure.
And but I think that this is a game where I go, this is more of a Tom game, and this is one of those things that divides. I think,
Totally.
Right. So I think it's interesting that how there is that.
Yeah.
And also because Trey doesn't like the dice factor, and he also doesn't. There's no real engines per se.
He doesn't like the dice factor, and he also doesn't like a game that has
but not the same way that in Euro.
Listen, the dice thing bothers him. It bothers him that he makes the right play, and if he rolls poorly, he is getting punished.
And there's a huge
for doing the right
upfront
play.
ask in this game. The upfront ask
which
is
the other thing.
know the cards.
But by the way, that you make the right move, but you don't get rewarded. That's life. That's why I think it works thematically.
Right, but some people
that's why it
play
works
board games
thematically
to
in
get
this
away
game,
from
and
life.
that's why it's valid. That's why dice rolling is okay and awesome in this game.
Sure,
war is a roll of the dice. It sure is.
It is.
But some people don't enjoy that in their free time. That life is like that, but they want it. They want a more deterministic experience.
I'm just saying, I think it's okay when it works in the game and in the
For
theme
you,
of the game.
sure. Everybody has different needs out of their entertainment. Final thoughts on Twilight Struggle. It's in my top 10 of all time. I can't imagine it ever leaves. I will just say briefly, I'm very excited for Imperial Struggle. Just 3 days ago, Ananda Gupta said on Board Game Geek, I am doing final edits on the map this afternoon, and then Terry will be able to start on the counters. The cards are already designed. They just need to be laid out and proofed. Once that's done, we'll have art-locked components, so the playbook can then be laid out with graphics that use the final art. Likewise, the rulebook. I think we're in excellent shape. That sounds like we'll be getting it within the next year, I would say.
Yeah.
Imperial Struggle is basically Twilight Struggle in the area of Louis XIV. It is. It sounds awesome. It's also a 2-player game. It's depicting the 18th century rivalry between France and Britain. I already need to figure out what book I'm going to read to know everything about that historical era. The map is absolutely gorgeous. Have you guys seen the map? I don't know if I can show it to you, but it is shockingly beautiful. I cannot wait to play this game. I mean, this is the first game from them since 2005. I mean, this is massive.
Well, for them together, yes.
Yes.
Jason did Founding Fathers. He's done a bunch of things that are in this realm. It's fantastic. Go get the game. Get the app. You can play with your friends.
You can play with us.
You can set the timer for as long as 45 days. Like, what kind of lowlife would start a game with you and not be able to finish it in 45 days?
Someone with a newborn. And a crazy amount of work.
Matt, do you want to admit something?
Yeah, we had a 45-day timer, and I let it time out, and I feel bad about it, and I'm sorry. Look, this game is tough for me to play because it is only on Steam and iPad, and when I'm working, the only thing I have access to is my phone. I put my iPad away. I turn off. I don't have video games on my computer that I work on. That's on a separate computer. So I don't. And to open up the iPad then opens up a Pandora's box of losing 2 hours out of my day. Yeah. I get home at 6 o'clock. I'm with the baby till 8. Then I'm relaxing. It's hard. I don't remember to pull out my iPad. If it's on my phone though, it's much easier just to go bloop blop done.
Right. Which I imagine is how you take a lot of your turns.
Bloop blop done.
It's like, really, Matt did that?
Yeah. Oh, jeez. But I would love to play more and do that. Through the Ages is much easier for me because it's just right on my phone.
Jesse, what's your final word on the game?
Are you gonna cry?
Well, no, I was going to say, I have so much to say about it. Like, I love our first game and what's going on. And there's so much. We don't have enough time. I do want to say, I'm going to get a little real here for a second. I apologize. I'm a little estranged from my father and politics stuff. It's so stupid. But I grew up playing games with him, and he loved war games, and he taught me a lot of... I didn't know. Wow, in my mind, this was not.
It's okay, man.
It's all good, dude.
Yeah.
Over the years, he stopped playing games. I think he's lost it a bit, and he survived cancer, but he's slipping a bit, and we're not quite getting along. And I discovered this game a few years ago, and I was like, this would be my dad's favorite game.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And I tried to tell him about it, and he was like, but if we played it, then we'll win, and then it's not fair. And it's like, I just want to teach you the game.
Yeah,
you'll love it, Dad. And he wouldn't. But and diving into it now, I keep going, Dad, you love this game.
Yeah.
And I literally had a dream the other night that we were playing.
Dude, that's beautiful. Man. That's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that, man. It's heavy stuff, dude. And you've talked about your gaming history with your dad before, and how he taught you chess, and you guys played so many games together, and he gave you that winning spirit that you have in board games to this day.
Yeah, sorry, guys, I did not mean for that.
It's okay.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good.
Which country would your dad play?
U.S., of course. It's an American.
USA.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Jesse.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Look, man, games are
was
emotional
awesome.
and they're intense, and they, especially for a lot of us who grew up playing them, and we have some heavy relationships with gaming and our parents and etc.